Yellow. This picture here is from the book of the evangelist. It's a Greek 19th century manuscript. And I found this picture in this book here, the Lost Books of the Bible. When I enlarged it for the video, it wasn't very clear, so I had to redraw it, and I added color. Color helps identify the contents. It's a merger of the standard books of the Bible and the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha supplements the canon. Now, I'm going to begin up here with the Magi, the three wise men. According to Matthew, they came from the east. Now, there's speculation that they came from Arabia, Ethiopia, or India, as far away as India. But according to the Apocrypha, they were Persian men. They were following a prophecy by Zoroaster. In the Avesta, he said the sign of the birth of the Sail Shank, or Savior, would be a star or light in the sky. And they followed that star. Now, the star is not an actual star, because when they were looking at it, it seemed like a flying eagle carrying a child with a cross. So it's a light or spirit of your mind that leads you to the place of truth if you're a seeker. Now, you can see here this beam of light from the star directed these three wise men from a land of darkness and guided them to, see this line here? To Bethlehem, the birth of the Christ child. Now, this is the first one here is Zalazar. He had a purple cloak. He had a black beard. He was dark complected. And his gift to the Christ child was myrrh. Now, myrrh is a resin that is exuded from a tree. It has a bitter taste. It represents one eye, sees the maladies or the evils of the world, poverty, disease, and ignorance, and he's seeking a solution. Now, the second wise man here is Gaspar. He had a green cloak, a brown beard, and he was light complected, and his gift to the Christ child was frankincense. Now, frankincense also is a resin that's exuded from a tree, but it's different than myrrh. It has health benefits. It relieves pain and inflammation. So one eye sees the solution to these remedies of life as knowledge. The third wise man here, his name is Malchior. He had a gold cloak. He had white hair and a beard. And his gift to the Christ child was 30 gold coins, representing his solution, or his eye. One eye sees the solution to these maladies of life as money. Now, in addition to these gifts, each of the three wise men gave the Christ child a piece of gold, representing they thought that the Christ child was the third eye divine. Now, the star led them to Bethlehem, where the Christ child was born. And that means the house of bread. Because bread is made out of grains, it represents the knowledge of genetics. Now this house here represents the house of bread. These rectangular bricks here represents books in the Bible, the knowledge of the higher law. Now these three windows here represents the knowledge of the higher law of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Mother, represented by the Virgin Mary, Joseph, and the Christ child. Now over here we have a different window with a different shape, and it represents the higher law requires a right and by a spirit of your mind and body. Now the Virgin Mary here, the mother, she has a wristband here on her right arm. And she's gesturing the Christ child is the light and spirit of the fifth kingdom. See that here, her thumb? Not the fourth. The fourth is human. The fifth is divine. Now the Christ child is wrapped in a swaddling cloth, and that represents the principle of sublimation. Now at the birth of Christ, there was an ox and a donkey, or an ass. They're the same thing. And the ox represents your mind and senses controls the four principles and the sixth of sex genetics of the birth of Christ, based here on the higher law in these principles. Now the donkey represents the vehicle that Christ carries out his work on earth. He hears, see his ears here? He hears his spirit or voice, and he feels his touch. Remember, Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. So that's his vehicle for carrying out his work on earth. It represents you if the Christ child is born in you. Now, you see here that this takes place in a cave. And the reason for that is this is a mystery of life that you can't see with your eyes, your physical eyes. Now Mary here, the Virgin Mary, has a halo here representing the illumination of the Divine Mother principle. This cushion that she's sitting on or reclining on represents the principle of you. See this? If you understand these four essential elements, human and divine genetics, and the triad of the Father, Mother, and Son. Now, you see here there's a double line. There's two mother principles. Mary, according to Mark, also had other children. But this higher line represents the divine principle of the mother, the Virgin Mary. Now, down here, we have Joseph. Now he has a double halo here represents the double illumination of the Father principle. Now it's true that Joseph denied being the father of this child by human means of impregnation. But to decide who should be betrothed to Mary, the Virgin Mary, the single men were summoned to the temple, and they laid their rods on the altar. And the only one that blossomed, on which landed the dove representing the Holy Spirit, was Joseph. So he is the father, even if he doesn't admit it, to protect himself possibly from ridicule or persecution. He's looking over here. Now look at, see his right hand here to his head? That's the divine principle. It's touching his beard here, representing his sexual maturity as one principle. And this is the lower principle here, carnal, of the genetics of the Son here. Rightly understand these two principles. Now he's looking over here at these two bulls in a field, representing human and divine genetics. Now why are animals here representing human and divine genetics? Because their form represents the four principles and the five and the six by the tail here better than humans. Excuse me. Now you see over here there's two lines, two principles of father genetics. Now this higher principle here, you see here, is related to the conception of the Virgin Mary. Now over here is depicted the first bath of Jesus. It was popular or standard in the iconography of the Eastern Orthodox Church of the Nativity. These plants right here represent some of these things can be found in the Proto-Evangelium of James. When the Virgin Mary was about to give birth, Joseph went out looking for a midwife. Now today, when a woman is about ready to give birth, she goes to a hospital, generally speaking, if she can. But then they didn't have hospitals. They sought the service of a midwife. They were trained in childbirth. Now these plants up here represent the Gospel of Matthew, apocryphal. This is a different author than the book of Matthew in the Bible. He names the two midwives, and it's based on the Gospel of James down here, but it has more detail. Now why is the infant Jesus given a bath? Because there's a lot of wrong opinions and beliefs on who he is. So this needs clarification, a cleansing. Now Salome is seated here on this chair. Now she was a Hebrew midwife, trained to assist in childbirth, and it was practiced in Judea or Israel to give an infant a bath when born. And this goes all the way back to the book of Ezekiel, where it states an infant gets a bath after birth. So that's 600 years ago. She is with her left arm. You see she's got a wristband here representing the Son, human. How does she know that Jesus is human? by touch of the physical body. I see with her right arm here, she's got a wristband here, and she's referring to the Son of God here as, see here, pointing to a spirit of the fifth kingdom. The spirit and light of the fifth kingdom. Now how does she know this? Well, she's trained as a midwife concerning the birth of humans. But she visited the cave where Mary was at, spoke to her, and she witnessed the birth of the Christ child, or seen evidence of it. So she understood both principles. Now you see down here this chair that she's sitting on? You see the sign here? What she is indicating here is the double truth. Jesus is the Son of Man and the Son of God. Now you see down here her foot, rightly understand. Jesus is a human and a divine spirit, or man. Now, we're going to go over here to Zalone. She also was a trained midwife, so she understood the human principle. And she also visited Mary in the cave, spoke to her, and seen evidence of the Christ child. So she understood, see, with both feet here, both principles of the mother, human and divine. Now she has a vase here, or a pitcher, and she's assisting here in the bath of Jesus. Now the Son of Man, she knows, is born by the blood of the mother. How do they know that? They have to sever the placenta. But she also understands the birth of the Christ child because she visited the cave. Now, is your blood necessary for the birth of the Son of God? Not exactly. The blood represents your body's vital force. There's a difference. So this is a water blood bath. Now, you have Mary, the Virgin Mary, and Joseph is a mother and father of the Son of God. Who is the mother and father of the physical body of Jesus? Well, Luke chapter 1 tells us. This is a mountain here, and these three plants or bushes represent the mother and father of the physical body of Jesus was Zechariah and Elizabeth, who gave birth to John. John is the physical body of Jesus. Now, when Mary conceived, she went directly to the house of Elizabeth and stayed there for 3 months until John was born. You see, the physical man has to be born first, and then the Christ, the Son of God, is born second. Now, Elizabeth and Zechariah are represented by this ram and female sheep here, or doe, representing they practice carnal genetics, not the higher law. And this small hill or mountain here, see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. It represents a right and biased spirit. They're not sinners if they don't practice the higher law. Now listen, this could be a male and female goat. And the difference is, goats are more independent, they're non-religious, whereas sheep are religious. but they both produce something of value for society and the economy. Their produce gives vitality to the world. Necessary, essential. So they're not sinners if they practice the carnal law. Now I'm going to go up here to this angel standing here near the top of this mountain. You can see here with its right hand it is explaining something. Now with its left hand here you can see it almost hidden here, but it's in this position. It means to grasp. This is a phallic symbol here, a principle of life. In the scarf here, it makes a circle. So these are grasp these two principles, genetic principles of the sun. Now we're speaking of the sun divine here because we're high on a mountain. And this message of this angel, see this sign here? It's directed toward your spirit. You sign. Now these two men here represent what those two principles are. The first one here represents, it requires one of those principles, genetic principles of the sun, is a right, and by a spirit, see the scarf here, spirit of mind and body. Now the second man here represents the second genetic principle. See the sign here? It requires the sacrifice of your blood or life. And he's referring here with two arms. He's got a wristband on both. He's referring more rightly to the divine son here than the carnal. Now, this angel up here has his hands in this position. And he's telling this man here that the writings or teachings of the apostles have a double meaning. The left hand here represents the literal meaning. That's not exactly right. However, necessary to explain the symbolic meaning. But the symbolic meaning is right, not the literal. And these men back here represent apostles. James, Matthew, Luke, Mark, John. Now, as I mentioned John here, I forgot to tell you, why are these wise men giving this gift to the Christ child? Well, it says in 1 John 4:14, I think it is, if I remember correctly, that God sent his Son in the world to be a Savior. And you see the arm of Jesus here? His right arm is over his left, which means his primary mission in life is right over wrong. Now I'm going to go to this next angel here, and you see here the sign again, as we see it over here. It's meant for you. And he has his arms in the same position, referring to two things. Now this sign here in the middle is a leg. It's the lower half of the leg. It represents the principle of understanding used in this picture of the nativity. See here? Joseph is referring to rightly understanding the two father principles here. Understanding the two mother principles here. Understanding that Jesus here is both human and divine. Now, do you believe that the Son of God is born on earth as a physical man by supernatural or miraculous means? Well, you're wrong. If you believe that the Son of God is Christ born in the physical man, then you're right. Now over here, we have another group of angels. And this angel here is telling this man in the middle that there are 3 eyes. No, excuse me. Sorry. There are 2 third eyes. Human and divine. Now man has 2 eyes, physical, that he sees the physical world. But he has a third eye. He can close his 2 eyes and visualize things in his mind. And the light of his third eye is his subjective knowledge or memory. And these other angels here represents your other senses which illuminate your spirit of mind. Your hearing, your taste, your smell. Your smell is important. It tells you what's good and bad. You also have feeling. You have conscience. So you have these senses that helps you to illuminate your spirit of mind. Now, this star. You see here, it is a double beam of light here. It's indicating that the birth of Jesus here is both human and divine. And you know what? I'm going to explain this disc. Up here, there's a cross here inside of this halo. But the head is hiding part of it. So it has a cryptic meaning. So now I'm going to explain what that means. Because we know up here by these angels that we have, this angel is telling this man there's 2 third eyes, human and divine. And now I'm going to explain to you what this means, because there's a cross in here. And here's what that cross is. The head is killing 1/4 of it. See this here? This is the cross. It's called the Elysee Pati cross. And how it's formed is 4 intersecting circles. See these circles here? They make this cross. When you add the 5th, you get the cross or halo of Jesus here with the cross in it. Now what this cross signifies is the 2 eyes of man and his third eye. That's the one inside your brain, in your mind, excuse me. And you have the third eye divine. So over here, what we have, now this is more correctly Jesus Christ than Jesus. He's the Son of Man and the Son of God. But this halo here with the cross inside, the Elysee Pati cross, means a composite spirit and light of 4 eyes illuminating the mind. Or you can say, to make it simple, Jesus Christ was human and divine enlightenment, or the spirit of and light of 4 eyes. 2 human, 1 his third eye, and the third eye divine. Now, I was talking about this light here, with a star, and you see it's a double beam here. It's illuminating the birth of Christ as human and divine. But it's also an 8-pointed star, 8 points. And that represents there are 8 right spirits. You can say yes or no to carnal genetics, human, or you can say yes or no to divine genetics, both male and female, and those are 8 right spirits. You're not a sinner if you don't practice the higher law. Now you see this light here has also an impact here on the earth. These discs up here represent, these are people on the earth illuminated by this picture. And you see here, these 2 men, they have their hands in this position as they do down here. They're taking sides on this issue. One believes that Jesus is human and divine, and the other doesn't. Now you see this man speaking to this man here. He's telling him that Jesus has 2 mothers, Elizabeth and the Virgin Mary. And this man over here is telling this man here that Jesus has 2 fathers, Joseph and Zachariah. One is the birth of the Son of God, the other, and they come together. They are joined. Now, there's other people back there also discussing these other principles here of the birth of the Christ child. Now, you see this sign going across here in this half circle here? It represents this picture illuminates your spirit of mind. Now, let me think. I have explained everything in this picture. So, just a minute. So, I'm finished for today.